Welcome back to Analytical Media. We are a consortium of therapists, college professors, and well-published peer-reviewed authors. Today we will continue our look at targeted individuals or victims of gang stalking. We will cover another case from our research, and let me read you this and I will comment as I read. And again, when I finish, this is an actual letter submitted to a researcher, which has been turned over to us. This is again unsolicited. This is a part of no study. This was just an unsolicited letter sent to a group of researchers. I am a targeted individual and I am credible. My targeting began in 2004, and until 2010, I never heard the term gang stalking or targeted individual. I am still a targeted individual. I just posted this tonight on my Facebook page. Please provide your expert insight to this letter. I know it sounds delusional to believe that other people are targeting me, but why is it that from 2004 through 2010, I was being targeted and harassed, in some cases exactly as other targeted individuals from all over the USA and the world? If I was delusional, shouldn't my delusional experiences be different and unique? And let me pause here to say, no, they do not need to be different and unique. If you look historically at state mental hospitals where long-term care and commitment was taking place, there were at any given time several individuals who believed themselves to be Jesus Christ, who, by the way, would become upset when somebody else would claim to be Jesus Christ. It wasn't like we could all be happy together and all be Jesus Christ. No, there was only supposed to be one. And they could become very angry, even violent, towards the other Jesus. So, shouldn't my delusions be different and unique? And the answer is no. I'm sure they will be to some degree, of course, because every individual is different and unique. But generally, the basis of the delusion may be widespread. It may be stable, a stable base. And the stable base really is persecution, a common delusion, persecution, the basis. And then whatever fits. Don't forget, there's a similarity between the belief that you are being targeted, you've been picked out, secret things are being done to you, things are being implanted into your body, and alien abduction, the reported alien abduction experience, where things are also being implanted in your body, where you cannot escape. If you go to the mountains, they'll find you there. If you're in the middle of New York City, they will find you there. And they do. And that's the experience related. So, the persecution feelings are very common. Perhaps the most common delusion is a delusion of persecution. Probably because as one's world, when you can no longer trust your brother who doesn't see what you see and your father who doesn't hear what you hear, and then it becomes a major problem. Like, you heard it, like I heard it, you heard it. Very clearly, the voice said, your sister is trying to kill you. That's what the voice said. It said, your sister is trying to kill you. You heard your sister's voice when you were in your room very clearly say, I am going to kill my brother. So, you've heard the expression, to see it is to believe it. To hear it is to believe it. It's the idea that you can trust your senses, and when you are delusional, you cannot trust your senses. Now, this person goes on to talk about where they've worked. Good facilities, mental hospitals, and he worked there as a mental health worker. Said his job was to observe, interact, and to document the behaviors of mentally ill people. Then he goes on to say, I've never met two delusional people who shared the same circumstances. In each case, their delusion was unique to them and them only. Even in the case of patients who shared the same diagnosis of delusional disorder, persecution type, they all had a unique perspective of who, what, and why were to blame. None of them, not even one, ever validated something from another patient as something that they believed to be true. Neither did they collaborate with one another and compare notes on their delusional disorder. I spent 6 long years in complete darkness. I could find no information on organized harassment because I never heard of it. But by the time I found out that organized harassment was real, I had 6 long years of experience with exactly the same thing that other people were complaining of. I know, shared delusional disorder is something new added to the DSM-5. But in order to have this diagnosis, one must be influenced by someone who's already delusional and who is propagating delusions or delusional thinking. So that means that someone who's delusional must pass off their same type of delusions, which by the way is unique to them and them alone, to someone who is not delusional, and that person must buy into that same delusion and then become delusional in the very same manner and belief of the one who passed on their delusion to the person who was never delusional to begin with! Exclamation point. So to assume that I am delusional by way of either being delusional or influenced by someone else is nonsense. And again, it is this closed thinking that would alert someone to the fact that this person may be delusional. What I mean by that is this person is asserting that they are the ultimate authority. There's no room for them being wrong. They're not allowing themselves to be incorrect. They're not allowing for a delusion. He says, so to assume that I am delusional by way of either being delusional, based on my unusual set of circumstances, or influenced by someone else is nonsense! Exclamation point. No, it's not nonsense. When you can't trust your ears and you can't trust your eyes, and you have clearly heard your sister talking to someone about murdering you, even though somehow it's through 2 floors, 6 walls, even though that would make it seem impossible for you to hear anything, you clearly heard it because no audio, no sound waves were transmitted. This was a delusion. And even if you're not sure that it was, you must allow for the fact that it might be. And if you say, no, it is not, it is nonsense! Exclamation point. You're very closed-minded, and you're not open to the fact that you may have a delusion. You must allow for that. If it's real, there will be evidence. You can find evidence. Evidence that you could share with other people. Evidence you can record or videotape or copy or photograph. I documented every event from 2004 to 2010, and they are in some cases exactly what other people have experienced, is what I would later find out by doing research. So on the one hand, he's claiming that delusional people can't share the same delusions. Then he goes on to say the events from 2004 to 2010 are in some cases exactly what other people have experienced, kind of arguing against himself there, weakening his own argument. I've continued documenting every event since this began, and guess what? Other people have voiced the very same complaints. Again, attacking his earlier argument. And here are a few of the very similar things that other people who are being targeted have and are currently experiencing. And I would like to stop for 1 second to point out to you, as I read you this letter, clearly this letter is well written. Clearly this is a person of intellect. Clearly this person is functioning at a very high level. This person may be delusional. They go hand in hand. You can be very intelligent, functioning at a very high level, being a judge in a federal court system, being a surgeon in a hospital, heading a clinic, being one of the few people in the world perhaps who could successfully complete a certain operation. These go hand in hand. It is not that delusions and hallucinations stop you from being coherent and logical. They don't. So here are a few of the very similar things that other people who are being targeted have and are currently experiencing. Bullying at work, phone hacking. Now this is evidence that's being presented here. Bullying at work, well, that's subjective. Somebody would have to be at work and it would be somebody, your coworker's opinion versus your opinion. It's subjective. So that's not evidence. Phone hacking. It could be objective evidence, but we would need proof of it. And proof is not the fact that I talked to a friend on the phone and when I came home later that day, my wife, my mother, my friend knew about that conversation, knew what we talked about. That is not evidence. PC hacking, computer hacking. What evidence do you have to suggest that that's true? Are you saying your computer's been hacked because files are missing? You know you filed this away earlier and now it's gone? No, that's not evidence. Comes another one, veiled threats and innuendos by complete strangers and in some cases co-workers. Veiled threats and innuendos by complete strangers and in some cases co-workers. This is an admission that the evidence here is extremely weak because it wasn't a threat. It was a veiled threat. You would have to unfold it, reveal it, diagnose it, analyze the threat to reveal it because it's been veiled. It has been hidden under layers of cloth. It's not seen immediately, it's veiled. Or innuendo. Innuendo means the threat was hinted at. It wasn't direct. It was hinted at. It could have been a veiled threat there. It might have meant something mean there. And then he says by complete strangers. And then we get to another problem with targeting, gang stalking. The number of people involved would be enormous. Think about it. When we listen to, and I'm speaking to people who do not believe they are being gang stalked, and people who believe they're being gang stalked. How many people would have to be part of this conspiracy? Now we have complete strangers coming up to this person and other people who believe they're being gang stalked. How many people, how many strangers? 20, 30, 50? How many police officers? The local police with 50 employees, all a part of this. Then the state police with thousands of employees, part of this. The U.S. government with tens of thousands of employees, part of it. Now, I don't know how many people are involved or are being asserted as being involved, but it's an enormous number of people when you consider there are an enormous number of people who believe they're being gang stalked. And when you're talking about 10,000 people, perhaps, across the country, targeting hundreds of other people, don't you think that there would be a slip up where someone would say, yeah, I was hired by the government and here's my paycheck and that's where I met my wife. There's nothing like that. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. It doesn't mean it isn't real. And that's important because it could be. It could be real. And it is a disservice to anyone to be blown off, to be tossed aside, to immediately assume that they are crazy. It's a disservice. It's morally bankrupt. But if you believe that you're being targeted, realize you could be delusional, and also realize you don't know. You don't instinctively know whether you are or are not delusional. You can't tell. An intelligent person. I once had a schizophrenic client who had been diagnosed years earlier, and she knew her limitations. She knew when she might be having a delusion. It wasn't like, oh, no, I know for sure. That's real. It was like, I think they have cameras hidden in my apartment. I need to look into that. I need to find out. But she thought there were cameras there. She saw them. She knew her limitations. She knew her medication could be off. Nonetheless, she was actively delusional. But she allowed for the fact that anything might be a delusion. Not that she would instinctively know. It turns out, by the way, that what she thought were cameras filming her because she was being targeted, she was being watched, turned out to be stub outs of old gas lines when the house where she rented an apartment, where and when it had had gas lights back at the turn of the previous century. Not uncommon with homes that are 100 years old. Going on with his list of evidence, noise harassment and noise campaigns. Noise harassment and noise campaigns. Smear and slander attacks and campaigns. Overt surveillance or complete strangers conspicuously following them and making it profoundly clear that they are being followed. Again, think about that. There's a complete stranger who is overtly, conspicuously following them and making it profoundly clear that they are being followed. So very overtly letting one know that they are being surveilled. What is the purpose of surveillance if it is overt and not secretive in any fashion? Receiving threatening emails that cannot be traced. Again, that's an assumption that they cannot be traced. An assumption of complete authority. They cannot be traced. He doesn't say that are beyond my abilities to trace, or that taken to the surveillance group that I employed that makes itself publicly available, a private detective laboratory technical analysis, they said it couldn't be traced. Perhaps he means he couldn't trace it. But again, it's asserting complete authority. They are the highest authority on the subject. Cannot. Doesn't say difficult to trace. It says cannot be traced. Receiving threatening texts or phone calls from untraceable phone numbers. Again, one would suspect paranoia. Untraceable phone numbers. What expertise do you, the listener, and I have in tracing phone numbers? None. Police have some expertise. Private organizations that one might hire have expertise. The phone company certainly has expertise. But untraceable? Who says they're untraceable? He goes on to say, I have no history of mental illness, but my career was destroyed by the crime of harassment. I was 42 when this began, way too old for a diagnosis of schizophrenia or any other mental illness. That, of course, is totally wrong. Totally wrong. Could be diagnosed at any time with a mental illness. In general, antisocial has to have an early diagnosis to receive the antisocial diagnosis as an adult. But virtually everything else can develop at any time. And likely, antisocial can develop at any time. We're just talking about the rules of the DSM. Doesn't mean that they're right on that point, or that they're right at all when it comes to antisocial versus psychopathy, which the world uses psychopathy. The United States uses antisocial. Personality disorder to mean the same thing. And he goes on to say, I was once a mental health worker. I have 11 years working with mentally ill patients. I've interacted with thousands of mentally ill people and documented their behaviors. And I never encountered anyone with delusional disorder who shared the same set of circumstances as another with a diagnosis of delusional disorder. And again, that's simply untrue. That may be what they think they saw, or they may be making too fine a discrimination. The truth is, everyone with delusional disorder has a very similar delusion that they're being persecuted by family members, strangers. He goes on to say, I was astonished to find that there were other people who were experiencing the same types of harassment as I. For I thought that I was the only person in the world who was being tortured like this. So, with your wisdom and knowledge on this subject, how do you explain what is happening to me? Do you think there's any chance that perhaps I dreamed all of this up? What are the odds of someone having the exact same experiences of other people around the world with no foreknowledge that this type of harassment even existed? Well, the odds are excellent. Absolutely excellent. In fact, that's evidence that this is a hallucination, a delusion, more than it is gang stalking. And then he says, if not, I'm sure that you and your colleagues can find a mental disorder to fit that. And if not, you can create a new one to add to the DSM-6 to explain it away. Well, I can accept his sarcasm. He goes on to say, I suggest that you put just a little more effort into your research. That video that Vice did on gang stalking was a mockumentary. They did very little research and chose someone who is clearly mentally ill to pose as a legitimate targeted individual. I've researched the person in that video. He has a YouTube channel, and he is not a credible TI. Yes, there are people who are mentally ill who identify as targeted individuals, who are not, in fact, targeted individuals. I once met a man, he names the hospital, but I won't mention it, who was delusional. He claimed to be the bass player for Aerosmith. After he was placed on medication, his delusion went away and was discharged. There are people who claim that we are targeted because of our Rh blood factor, which is false. There are people who claim that alien reptilian shapeshifters are targeting them, which is false. The majority of these people are not actually being targeted, they're actually mentally ill. Before you write your next article about targeting or gang stalking, why don't you use empirical research instead of browsing topics on the internet about the subject? ? You are not the first so-called researcher who delves no deeper than Google to make or base your claims. I've actually read a thesis posted on the internet which is just as badly researched as yours. Did you know that there are more than 25 credible people who know for a fact that gang stalking is real? They include NSA whistleblowers, former FBI agents, medical doctors, and attorneys. If you want to do some real research, why not start with me? This, to me, is a critical point. It's critical to note that these people want help. This type of letter, unsolicited, is not at all uncommon. They do their own research, they come across researchers, various articles, and they reach out for help. And it is a sin that these people are delegated automatically to the realm of trickery, foolery, insanity. And it must be torture for these people. All of these people, not just this individual. It must be torture to find no help in this world. He goes on to say, I've taken a personality assessment inventory, and there's no findings of delusions or mental illness. I look forward to your reply. Best regards. So-and-so. Now, 2 points here. Though we don't have time in life to treat every topic seriously, and I'm talking about professionals in life, law enforcement officers, mental health professionals, limited time, limited resources. Nonetheless, something should be done to assess the validity of the claims of these individuals. Laws should be passed and recognize the frustration that the TI, the targeted individual, goes through. Immense frustration, torture. They don't believe they're crazy, but yet everywhere they turn, they're told they're crazy. You're crazy, you're mentally ill, or we laugh behind your back when you turn your back. Which causes some of these people, after years of this, literally years, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 years of this, causes them to fight back, to pick up a weapon and make a statement. Make a statement that of the torture they're going through, of the plight they're in. They make a statement, usually with the idea that they may not survive their encounter with the police. Now, having said that, I'm looking at it from the standpoint that it may be real, and I post that idea, I posit that idea to all of you. However, to the gang stalking victim, the targeted individual, I must also say, you have to allow for the fact that what you're experiencing is delusional. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, look, I saw it. I heard it. But you have to understand that's what a delusion or a hallucination is. You do hear it, and it's every bit as real as if it were real. Yet it is no more than a delusion. The voices that you heard in your head weren't real. Nobody was talking to you. And the right combination of medication should take that right away. Or at least change what they're saying to you, those voices, to something more benign, more mild. You need evidence, and if you can't find the people who believe they are targeted, if you can't find evidence on your own with a tape recorder, when you heard your sister talking to you, you could hear it as you laid in your bed in your room, then any tape recorder should also pick it up. And if the tape recorder doesn't, then you need a better microphone. Get the most sensitive microphone. Use a preamplifier. Get help from other TIs. If another TI can't hear your sister, and chances are you have to admit you're having a hallucination, which is part of a bigger delusion. Because why do you have to do that? Not for my benefit, for your benefit. Because if there is treatment that will return you to a state where you are no longer targeted, you must turn to that to save your life, to return your life to you. perhaps medication, perhaps counseling, perhaps a combination will do that for you. But being open to the fact that this is potentially delusional, though potentially real, means everything. It literally means everything. If you say, no, this is not a delusion, you then become the ultimate expert, where there is no ultimate expert. So that's a big step to assume that position of authority. Always allow for that possibility. And if you don't, it's a bad sign. It's a sign that you're delusional. You don't have to conclude that it's delusional. No conclusion necessary here. You have to allow for the possibility. Maybe it's delusional. Once again, I hope we've helped. This is Analytical Media. And subscribe. Pass this on to a friend. Hopefully, we've helped. If not, we'll try again the next time we post. Let us know. Post a comment. Send us an email. See you next time.